Hello, sentient beings. Today we are up to number 2 in the Eightfold Path, in the folds of the Eightfold Path, right thinking.
Wrong thinking is punishable. Right thinking will be as quickly rewarded. You will find it an effective combination.
Now, some of you scholarly types out there are already objecting because you've heard this given as right intention. And you may have even read it in my books as right intention. I just checked Letters to a Dead Friend about Zen, and when I mention it there, I give it as right intention, and I probably did that in other books too. And there's a reason for that. The reason is the Sanskrit is Samyak Samkalpa, and I think the Pali is Pali and Sanskrit are very much almost the same language. So if you look up Sankalpa in a Sanskrit English dictionary, which I did, the first meaning you'll get is will, volition, mental resolve. Then second is purpose, aim, intention, determination. Third is wish and desire. But number 4, we get thought, idea, reflection, imagination, fancy. And then 5, mind and heart. So it has a kind of a dual meaning. It could mean resolve and intention, or it could mean thought. When it was translated into Chinese, they picked a word that meant thought. But let's get into the resolve part of it first, intention part of it first. Since this is often translated into English as right intention, you get people in the Buddhist world in America kind of riffing on about intention, usually highly influenced by New Age thought that they've picked up along the lines. And honest to God, I never really understood the obsession with intention that shows up in a lot of New Age people. It seems like they think that if they intend something, it'll make it happen. I guess there's a lot of that in like The Secret and all that, this idea of intending something and then it actually manifests in the world. I don't get that. But you'll see Buddhists in America kind of going on about it as if that's what it is, and that's not what it is. In original, very early Buddhism, the right intention that they were talking about was very specific. It was the intention to leave home and leave family and become a monk or a nun. And monks, I use the term monk to mean whatever gender you want to be, but some people like the word nun. Anyway, that was the intention or the resolve. I think resolve here, it makes it more clear. You resolve to leave your home and leave everything and become a monk. A bit later on, it got slightly modified, and we have an example from the Pali Canon in which the Buddha is reported to be saying, "And what is right resolve? Being resolved on renunciation, on freedom from ill will, on harmlessness, this is called right resolve." In that kind of a definition, it's not exactly that you're resolving or intending to become a monk or a nun, however you want to call it, but you are resolving to have the sort of mindset of a monk or nun. That you resolve to renounce things of the world, resolve to have freedom from ill will, and be harmless. So that's a pretty nice thing to resolve to do. That's really cute. I think that's nice. Also, one way to look at it, although it doesn't say this in any of the sutras I've come across, is the idea that you're resolving to follow the Eightfold Path. So there's another way to look at it. When this was translated, the Eightfold Path, into Chinese, they chose to translate it in the meaning of thought rather than intention. And here is what Nishijima Roshi says in his footnotes about this. It's a 2-character word that is shi-i, and the first character, shi, or sometimes omo, he says, covers a range of mental activities, perhaps even wider than the English word think, including wishing and hoping. On the other hand, I, the next character in the compound, means to ponder, reflect on, think over, and so the compound shi has somewhat general and reflective feeling. On the other hand, the Sanskrit samkalpa, which she represents, seems to carry some sense of definite purpose. You have these 2 meanings of the word and 2 ways to interpret what is meant by right intention, right resolve, right thinking. So it gets very different in English, and my impression is in Sanskrit the word chosen could go either way. So here is what Dogen says. So Dogen gets a little weird with this one, and it does not sound like right intention at all when he gets in, well, we could argue whether it sounds like right intention or not, but it really takes the thinking idea, the idea that this is right thinking rather than right intention. So Dogen says, right thinking is a branch of the path. When we establish this thinking, the Buddhas in the 10 directions all appear. So the manifestation of the 10 directions and the manifestation of the Buddhas are just the time of the establishment of this concrete thinking. Nishijima Roshi chooses to translate that as concrete thinking. Probably a more direct translation would be to just say right thinking, but let's just gloss over that for the moment. When we establish this concrete thinking, we are beyond self and transcending the external world. I don't like the grammar there. I would say we are beyond self and beyond the external world, just to make it a little bit clearer. At the same time, in the very moment of the present, on thinking concrete facts, which is on doing right thinking, we go straight to Varanasi. And the reason it says Varanasi is the place where Buddha attained his complete, perfect, unsurpassed enlightenment. So we attain enlightenment, is what he's saying. The place where the thinking exists, the right thinking exists, is Varanasi. So conceptually, it is Varanasi. It is the place of enlightenment. An eternal Buddha says, I am thinking the concrete state of not thinking. How can the state of not thinking be thought? It is different from thinking. This is right consideration, right thinking. To break a zafu is right thinking. So those of you who followed my stuff before will probably recognize this. And if you're a newcomer to it, let me try to explain. That is a famous koan that Dogen was very fond of, and it shows up in a lot of his writings, especially his writings about how to do zazen, like Fukan Zazengi. And thinking the concrete thought of not thinking is, in the first instance, he says, Fushiryo. Shiryo is usually translated as consideration rather than thinking. So it's not just random thinking bubbling up into your heads, it's actually deliberately thinking about something, like putting energy into it. So he says Fushiryo. And in the next instance, the unnamed monk says, well, what the heck is Fushiryo? What is not thinking? And Nishijima Roshi translates it as, it is different from thinking. Different from thinking is Hishiryo. And the fu and the he are both negations. So shiryo is consideration. So fu is a negation and he is a negation. He is a much stronger negation. It's like the difference between saying something is not legal and saying something is illegal. Or the difference between saying something is not moral and saying something is immoral. It's that sort of, it's against the thing that you are saying. The most common place that I saw that he prefix is in hijoguchi, which is emergency exit. So hijo is an emergency. So words like emergency and illegal and immoral and things like that take that he prefix. So this is a really complicated idea and very difficult and in one sense. Difficult to explain, not so difficult to actually put into practice when you get kind of the hang of it. And it's sort of like, okay, non-thinking or not thinking or hishiro is not a special state of consciousness, but it's putting aside thinking. So every time a thought appears in your mind, you just put it aside. You don't, you resist the temptation to consider it and play with it and, do all that. Well, that's a habitual thing that we all do, so it's difficult to break a habit. It's like trying to stop smoking or whatever other habit you're trying to break. It's not easy to do, but you rehearse it over and over. You sit zazen every day, and every time a thought comes up, which is 150,000 times per one sitting of zazen, you put it aside, put it aside. That is hishiro. That is not thinking. Non-thinking is sometimes how it's translated, rather than different from thinking. So in Dogen's mind, right thinking is the kind of thinking that one is trying to establish as part of one's zazen practice, rather than a resolve to become a monk or an intention to do good or anything like that. He also says to break a zafu is right thinking, which to me implies that you're going to have to work at it. To break a zafu, you'd have to sit an awful long time on a zafu to break it. I've had a lot of zafus in my time, and I've seen a few broken ones, at temples and places where a lot of people sit on them, several times a day, every day for years, but it takes a lot of time to break a zafu. So he's saying that you're going to put that work into establishing this kind of non-thinking, this kind of hishiryo thinking. However, again, another however, this non-thinking, this state in Zazen is also something that you establish the minute you sit Zazen for the very first time ever in your life. This is from Bendoa. If a human being, even for a single moment, manifests the Buddha's posture in the three forms of conduct, that's body, speech, and mind, and he's saying manifest, he's saying just sit Zazen. He's being very fancy here. While that person sits up straight in samadhi, which is not, again, a special state of consciousness, it's doing Zazen, practicing any state of mind. The entire world of Dharma assumes the Buddha's posture, and the whole of space becomes the state of realization. And he adds a couple of lines later that those who live and talk with them, i.e. the people who are doing Zazen, also are reciprocally endowed with the limitless Buddha virtue. So even people who are hanging out with you, because you do Zazen, even if they've never done it before, they are partaking of your Zazen practice. And he also says, in the same Bendoa, the state of Zazen is not dimmed by the views of these individuals themselves, by the people who are doing Zazen, because the state in quietness without intentional activity is direct experience. So dimmed by the views of the individuals themselves. So even if you don't think your Zazen is any good, it is as good as it ever was. And that took me years to finally come around to. So if you're having trouble and struggling with that idea, I understand. But after doing Zazen for a number of years, it became really, really clear that even the worst Zazen was good Zazen. So that's what that means. And here is a line from Shinjin Mei, the Faith Mind Inscription, or Inscription of Faith in Mind by Sosan. The empty enlightenment illuminates itself. There is no need for the slightest mental effort. It is a realm of non-thinking, that's that hishiryo, a realm beyond the apprehension of reasoning and emotions. And again, that's not a special place to go to. That is the underlying bedrock of all experience when you finally stop layering stuff on it. So the way I think of it is you've got this nice pristine floor, or let's just say nice pristine floor, and you're just dumping garbage on it all the time, and you've got a huge pile of garbage on this nice pristine floor. Well, it doesn't make the pristine floor underneath it go away. It just hides it. So that's kind of what we've done with our thought. We've hidden the pristine state of hishiryo, non-thinking, or different from thinking, that exists underneath it as its bedrock all the time. And Dogen is pointing us to that as being the criteria for right thinking in the Eightfold Path. So there you go. That's right thinking. That was nice. That was painless. I don't know. Maybe it was painful for you. Anyway, if you want to keep me doing more of these, send a donation to the links you're seeing on your screen, or if you are on YouTube, the direct links to my Patreon and PayPal thingies are below, and you can click right on them. That is how I make my living. That's how I make everything work. If you are having financial trouble, do not send me a donation. I'm not destitute or desperate, but those of you who are continuing to contribute are making everything possible for me. So I really thank you very much for making it possible for me to live a life. And we will see you next time. Have a good time all the time. Bye.